Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for your quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today we're going to talk about the AI boom, but not from the angle we usually hear about. Not the chips, not the models, not the engineers, not the race between OpenAI, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and everyone else trying to build the next generation of artificial intelligence. Today we're going to talk about the people who pour the concrete, run the electrical systems, install the fiber, weld the pipes, build the cooling systems, and physically make the AI economy possible. Because there is a simple truth that it's becoming harder for the technology industry to ignore. There's no AI boom without the infrastructure, and there's no infrastructure without construction, and there's no construction without the workers. This week, both Meta and Google announced major investments in skilled trades training. Meta launched something called America's Workforce Academy, which is a free training program intended to prepare people for roles connected to data center construction and related infrastructure. The company described it as a fast-track pathway into skilled trades careers, with training support, industry-recognized credentials, and a job guarantee for graduates. The initial pilot locations include Louisiana, Ohio, Indiana, and Texas, all states where large-scale infrastructure and data center activity are already part of the economic story. Google also announced a major commitment, with Google.org investing $50 million to help train more than 300,000 American workers for high-demand skilled trades careers. Google's program is focused on supporting existing training organizations, including unions and trade associations, in areas like electrical work, welding, pipe fitting, plumbing, HVAC, sheet metal, and construction pre-apprenticeships. The interesting part is that Google is not trying to reinvent the skilled trades training ecosystem from scratch. It's putting its money into institutions that already know how to train workers and to certify them and connect them to work. So on the surface, these announcements are both good news, right? We've been talking for years about the need to rebuild pathways into good jobs that don't require a 4-year college degree. Skilled trades jobs can offer strong wages, consistent demand, and a real path into middle-class economic security. And at a time where many people are worried that AI will eliminate jobs altogether, here are two of the most powerful tech companies in the world saying, in effect, that AI is also creating demand for thousands and thousands of workers who are very much not sitting in Silicon Valley offices and writing code. But the deeper story is a little bit more complicated, and that's where this gets interesting from a workplace and workforce perspective. The demand for AI infrastructure is enormous. McKinsey has estimated that companies across the compute power value chain may need to invest more than $5 trillion in data centers by 2030 to meet AI-related demand alone. So that's a staggering number. It reflects not just the cost of GPUs and servers, but the entire physical system around AI. That's land, buildings, power generation, transmission, cooling, networking, backup systems, security, maintenance. AI may feel kind of ethereal when we use it on our laptops or our phones, but behind that simple prompt box is a massive physical and industrial build-out. And we are already seeing that build-out show up in construction markets. Data centers have become one of the major drivers of non-residential construction activity. And these projects can require large crews during the construction phase, including electricians, welders, plumbers, pipe fitters, HVAC technicians, fiber technicians, heavy equipment operators, engineers, and many others. And in some communities, data center construction can bring hundreds or possibly even thousands of temporary jobs during the peak build periods. At the same time, the United States already has a skilled trades labor problem. Construction employers have been warning for years that the workforce pipeline is not keeping up with the demand. For instance, the Bureau of Labor Statistics projects electrician employment to grow much faster than the overall labor market over the next decade, with tens of thousands of annual openings. And that's just one trade. Similar pressures exist across HVAC, plumbing, welding, pipe fitting, and industrial maintenance. Some of this is from growth, some of it is replacement demand as older workers retire, and some of it is from the decades of cultural messaging that's pushed so many young people towards 4-year college degrees as kind of the default path and treated the skilled trades as a second choice option when in reality, many of these jobs are essential, sophisticated, and economically quite valuable. So when Meta and Google invest in skilled trades training, they're not just doing corporate philanthropy, they're responding to a real business constraint. The limiting factor for AI may not only be chips or electricity or even oversight and regulation, it may be the people, specifically the people with the skills to build and maintain the physical systems upon which AI depends. So that's an important shift of how we should think about the AI labor market. Much of the early AI conversation has been dominated by the white-collar job displacement. What happens to software developers? What happens to customer service people? What happens to marketing, legal, HR, finance, administrative jobs, etc.? Those questions remain important, but these stories remind us that technology revolutions don't just change digital work, they create new demand for physical work. The cloud was never actually in the cloud, it sits in buildings. Those buildings need power, cooling, fiber, and maintenance, and they need lots of skilled workers. But here is the tension. These training programs are being announced at the same time that many communities are growing more skeptical of data centers, and the backlash is real. People are worried about electricity use, water consumption, land use, tax incentives, the environmental impact, noise problems, transparency, and whether or not these facilities will create enough long-term local jobs to justify these disruptions. A data center may bring a large construction workforce for a short period of time, but once it's operational, the permanent workforce is often much smaller than what people imagine when they hear about a multi-billion-dollar project. And that's where the workforce arguments get really tricky. Companies can say correctly that the data centers will create skilled trades jobs, and they can say that these jobs are good jobs. And they can say correctly that the training programs can open doors for workers who sometimes are left out of other parts of the digital economy. But communities are also asking these questions. What do we get in return? Do we get long-term opportunity or just short-term construction activity? Do we get lower barriers into good jobs, or do outside contractors come in and then leave when the projects are done? How will local workers and communities actually benefit in the long run, or do these projects mainly benefit the company or the utility and the developer? So these questions all matter because workforce development can't be used as a public relations shield for projects that communities don't welcome and don't trust. If companies want these skilled trades investments to be seen as credible, they need to connect them directly to local opportunities. That means local hiring commitments. It means partnerships with community colleges, unions, workforce boards, high schools, other community groups. It means transparent reporting on how many people were trained, how many people completed the program, how many got jobs, did those jobs pay well, whether the jobs stayed local, and whether or not their careers continued after the initial project ends. The Meta program is interesting because it does include a job guarantee, and that's pretty powerful. Too many training programs end when the course or program is completed. They give someone a certificate and then leave the hardest part, the actual connection to employment, unresolved. A training program without a job pathway is often just a hope strategy, and a training program tied to employer demand, recognized credentials, paid support, and placement is much, much stronger. And Google's model is also interesting because it appears to strengthen existing training infrastructure than rather trying to replace it. That matters because skilled trades training is not just about content delivery. You can't solve this with just video courses and certificates. These occupations require significant hands-on learning, safety standards, mentorship, apprenticeship structures, and real job site experience. The organizations that already operate in this world have that kind of knowledge that technology companies don't. So what can other employers take away from this in a bigger picture? The first lesson is that labor shortages require investment. Too often employers say they can't find skilled workers, but they're unwilling to train, unwilling to partner, unwilling to invest, and unwilling to build the pipelines themselves. Meta and Google are showing, at least in this case, that when business need is urgent enough, companies will put money behind serious workforce development. The second lesson is that training works best when it's connected to real demand. General upskilling probably won't be enough. People need to know what job they're training for, what credentials matter, where the jobs are, what the wage path looks like. That applies to trades, of course, but it also applies to other fields like healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, education, cybersecurity, and plenty of other fields where employers are saying talent is scarce. The third lesson is that barriers matter. If someone can't afford to stop working while they take training, they may never enter the pipeline. If transportation is a barrier, if the tools are too expensive, if they don't have access to childcare, if certification costs are too high, then these talent shortages are really design failures. Programs that remove these barriers are more likely to reach people who have the ability but need help with the access. And the fourth lesson is that employers should treat workforce development as an infrastructure investment, not as a charity or marketing or a one-off pilot. If a company depends on a certain kind of talent, then building that talent pipeline has to be part of their business model. It should be funded, measured, governed, and sustained. And the final lesson, I think, is about trust. The future of AI infrastructure will be decided only partly in boardrooms and engineering labs. It will also be decided in communities, permitting meetings, utility commissions, state legislatures, and local labor markets. If people believe that AI data centers will raise their electric bills, consume local resources, and produce relatively few permanent jobs, then a training announcement will not be enough. Companies will need to prove that these projects create long-lasting and shared value. So that's why this story, I think, is bigger than just Meta and Google. It's a signal about the next phase of the AI economy. The first phase was about the AI models. The second phase is about AI adoption. Now we're entering the infrastructure phase, where constraints become financial, physical, local, and human. Now we're having conversations about things like power, water, land, permits, trust, and of course skilled labor. The irony is that the most advanced technology in the world may depend on one of the oldest workforce truths. Someone has to build it. And if we want a stronger economy, we need to take those workers, those skills, and those pathways much more seriously. That's it for the show today. A big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. And be sure to subscribe to the HR Happy Hour Network on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.